College football is finally here, and there probably isn't going to be another player talked about this season as much as CJ Stroud. That's what happens when you put up an absolute beast sophomore year and are projected to be the first overall pick at the 2023 draft. Not only that, but he plays for one of the best teams in the country, Ohio State. The Buckeyes are loaded with talent as always, and there's no doubt they're on the fast track to the college football playoff. But that's all going to depend on how good Stroud can play. Stroud went to Rancho Cucamonga High School in California. He was a two-sport athlete and excelled on the basketball court too. He didn't start at quarterback on varsity until his junior year. Then he dominated as a senior, throwing for 3,878 yards and 47 touchdowns. Stroud was the MVP of Elite 11 and was selected to play in the All-American Bowl. Stroud was a four-star recruit and the number 2 pro-style quarterback in the class before committing to Ohio State. He was the backup to Justin Fields as a true freshman, so Stroud didn't throw a single pass, but he did have one rushing attempt. It went for a 48-yard touchdown. He was named the starter as a redshirt freshman, and he was great. The Buckeyes went 10-2 and ended up winning the Rose Bowl, a game where Stroud passed for a school record 573 yards. On the year, Stroud had 4,435 yards and 44 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He was named first team All Big Ten. Stroud is losing 2 absolute stud wide receivers, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Both went early in the 2022 draft, but don't you worry, child. There is still plenty of talent around Stroud, most notably Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Njigba went to Rockwall High School in Texas, where he was an absolute dog. His junior year, he had 97 receptions for 1,828 yards and 20 touchdowns. Then, as a senior, Njigba was the Texas Gatorade Football Player of the Year after he recorded over 2,000 yards and 35 touchdowns on over 100 receptions. He was an All-American, and he finished his high school career with over 5,300 yards and 82 touchdowns. Njigba was a 5-star, top 30 recruit in the country and the 5th highest rated wide receiver. He committed to Ohio State, where he didn't have much of a role as a freshman. Njigba only had 10 catches for 49 yards and a single touchdown, but he got a much bigger role as a sophomore. And Njigba, he broke out in a big way. On the year, he broke the Ohio State single game record for receptions with 15. Then, in the Rose Bowl, he set an FBS single game record with 347 yards. 347 yards in one game. Njigba had over 1,600 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2021 en route to being named an All-American. In the passing game, all eyes are going to be on Njigba this season, but there is a guy right behind him who could make a lot of noise, and you'll probably recognize his name, Marvin Harrison Jr. Not hard to figure out that Marvin Harrison Jr. is in fact the son of Hall of Fame wide receiver Marvin Harrison. The younger grew up in Philadelphia, and he went to LaSalle College High School before he transferred to St. Joseph's Prep, where he actually played with Kyle McCord, the backup to CJ Stroud. Harrison did commit to play at Ohio State after he was a rated 4-star and top 100 recruit. He joined the Buckeyes as an early enrollee in 2021, and he didn't play much as a freshman. In the regular season, Harrison had just 5 catches for 68 yards, but he got to start in the Rose Bowl after Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave opted out, and Harrison looked good. He had 6 receptions for 71 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. The beasts at Ohio State don't stop there either. Ohio State has one of, if not the best running back in the entire country in their backfield, TreVeyon Henderson. Henderson went to Hopewell High School in Virginia, where he rushed for over 4,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. I covered high school football for a newspaper in Richmond while TreVeyon Henderson was in high school, and when I tell you that this dude was built different, I mean it. He was a rated 5-star, was the number 1 running back in the country, and is a top 500 recruit of all time. Henderson was the 3rd-string running back at Ohio State to start his true freshman year, but it didn't take very long for him to get his shot. In his 3rd game, Henderson had an Ohio State record 277 rushing yards and found the end zone 3 times. On the year, he rushed for about 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns, plus he had 285 yards and 4 touchdowns in the passing game. If it wasn't obvious, Ohio State has a pretty damn good team. The Buckeyes are ranked at 2 ahead of the season. The offense was absolutely incredible. incredible last year, and that should be the case again in 2022. The defense wasn't as bad as it was supposed to be last season, but it's really hard to know what it will look like now. The Buckeyes hired Jim Knowles to be their new defensive coordinator. He was the DC at Oklahoma State in 2021, and it sounds like the defense is moving to more of a 4-2-5. The Buckeyes do have to start the year in an absolute barn burner against number 5 Notre Dame at the Shoe. There are some other big games that are really not just going to test Ohio State, but really test CJ Stroud. Number 18 Wisconsin comes to Ohio State, and the Buckeyes have to go on the road against number 15 Michigan State. But you all know the big game that everyone has circled on their calendar. The game, Michigan at Ohio State. The Buckeyes had won 8 straight until last year. Michigan won 42-27. The Buckeyes want that one back big time, and they're going to have a chance at home against a really good Wolverines team that is ranked 8th going into the season. So we'll have to see how it all plays out, but Ohio State definitely feels good with its roster and its head coach, Ryan Day. Day played quarterback in New Hampshire, and actually his offensive coordinator was Chip Kelly. Day broke 4 career records at UNH, and after his playing time, he began coaching there. He bounced around to a handful of colleges before becoming an offensive coordinator for the first time in 2012 at Temple, and after he had the same role at Boston College. Day jumped to the pros in 2015 to become the Eagles quarterback coach under Chip Kelly. Kelly was fired and went to San Francisco, where he hired Day for the same role. Day became the co-offensive coordinator at Ohio State in 2017, and he ended up acting as the head coach the next year while Urban Meyer was on administrative leave. The Buckeyes went 3-0 with him in charge, and after the year, he was named the full-time head coach. He's only lost 4 games in 3 years and made it to the national championship in 2020 before falling to Alabama. Ryan Day has a lot of experience coaching quarterbacks, even at the pro level, and that bodes really well for CJ Stroud. If CJ Stroud can go to the NFL and succeed, a lot of that credit does belong to Ryan Day. It's early, but as it stands right now, CJ Stroud is popping up as the projected first overall pick at the 2023 draft. There are a few big names like Bryce Young and Will Levis, but Stroud is expected to go higher for now. Stroud is probably more polished already, and he has good mechanics too. One of his early pro comps is Justin Herbert because he has similar arm strength and a similar strong frame with running ability. You can expect him to go in the first round of the draft unless he has a Sam Howell-esque drop, but that's not going to happen. See, Howell fell in the draft because the talent on his roster got worse, and his flaws all of a sudden were on full display. At Ohio State, Stroud is surrounded by a ton of talent, including Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who is likely going to be a top 10 pick too. He is arguably the best wide receiver in the class, and you can bet on NFL scouts watching him closely this year. He has good size, and the talent is obvious. There is one big concern though. Njigba has primarily played out of the slot, so there is some curiosity if he can beat press coverage consistently on the outside, but time will tell. He isn't an absolute blazer like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were either, but you can't ignore the numbers Njigba has put up at OSU. He is going to be killing it on an NFL roster in no time, just like CJ Stroud.